Welcome to Badaboom. I'm Chris. On this episode of the podcast, we have on Mike Carey, writer of Comixology originals The Lycan and Ghostbox. The Lycan, which was helmed by Punisher actor Thomas Jane, period piece that finds a group of men hunting the berserker beast, and Ghostbox, which follows two women as they inherit a box that changes their lives. Carey talks about what it was like to work with Jane and Comixology. Listen in and bada boom. Mike, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Good to be here.
Nice.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, a great pleasure.
Yeah, we're excited to chat with you about, some projects you have going on at Comixology. It's really exciting. Troy got to attend the Comixology's Originals event at New York Comic Con. So some of these titles we've
Right.
been looking forward to for a little bit. But what's it been like sort of working on these two projects, the Lycan and Ghostbox? I think they obviously have like a supernatural bend to it, but they're two completely different things, and it was kind of cool to read both and see sort of like how you balance those things.
Yeah, they're very different. I think very different in terms of art style, in terms of the sort of overall atmosphere. Both horror, but yeah, the Lycan is kind of classic gothic. Ghostbox is something different. I think Ghostbox has more of an aesthetic of sort of like early 90s, early 2000s Vertigo stuff. Um, Ghostbox was, this is a project that Pablo and I put together a few years back and shopped around and took a while to find a home. But we were really happy when Comixology picked it up. The Lycan has a much more complicated history, much more complicated backstory. I wrote the script for it 15 years ago. Thomas and David James Kelly approached me back in 2010 with a story completely worked out, a full episode breakdown for a six-issue miniseries, and asked me if I would like to write the script. Um, and I was reluctant at first. I don't normally work in that way, working out from somebody else's template. But then I read the breakdowns, and it looked like a really, really fun story with some very, very vivid characters and a lot of cool misdirects and reveals. So I said yes, and it's taken a decade and a half for it to go from script to finished page.
Yeah. And I think the finished page is really interesting because I think yes, it's this gothic horror, but it's even though it's a comic book, it has like a real, especially with the art style, just naturalistic feel to it. And I think
Yeah,
it's something we don't get too much. I think whether it be in comics, TV, film, like this type of story that it's like really like hard hitting, and I think there's a big cast of characters and there's a big mystery sort of coming up.
yeah.
But it does like have like sort of like a grit to it, which I really liked.
Thank you. No, I totally agree. So Diego wasn't the first artist on the book. Back in 2010, when we were working on the 2010, 2011, there was a guy named Sean O'Connor who was doing some of the art, and I think there's a piece of his in the frontispiece of issue one. And it was a kind of Bernie Wrightson style, like exquisite sort of like woodcut looking lines. But then he kind of vanished off the face of the earth, and we have no idea what became of him. When I saw the pages start to come in from Diego, I was completely blown away. The sense of place and time are amazing. The way that he's sort of brought the characters to life is gorgeous. As you say, it's not like anything else that's out there. It's very much got its own identity.
And was it difficult sort of working from someone else's plot? I know you said that it's something that you're not quite used to, but it seems like, from reading that first issue, you kind of fit right into it. But was it difficult to kind of land that despite it sort of, and also it took a really long time to come to life. So what was that like to sort of get at this point where, people are actually able to read it, and it's one of those things that probably in some ways you may have forgot, like, wait, oh yeah, I did that a couple years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to take the first question first, yeah, the process of working from the template that Thomas and David had created, it was actually kind of liberating because it had been done with a great deal of thought and precision. So it's like each issue There were set piece scenes that were kind of like built into the structure, and it kind of left me free to work mostly on voice and character. Just take these characters and try to sort of flesh them out and try to sort of to dramatize the interactions between them, to set up some of the stuff that's coming later, prepare the ground for some of the reveals that we're going to be getting. We haven't met all of the cast yet. There are some other characters coming in who've got a big part to play. Um, but yeah, the process I enjoyed. I enjoyed the actual writing. But then there was this long period when it seemed like the book wasn't going to happen at all, and that was kind of a bummer. You know, it was really sad. I'd given up hoping that the book was ever going to come out into the world, and then Thomas found Diego, and everything sort of snowballed from there. Suddenly, it was happening. Comixology picked the book up, and we started to see the finished art coming in, and yeah, it's been a wild ride, but we ended up in a good place, so no complaints.
Yeah, I'm glad it came together as well as it did after 15 years of working on it. And switching over a little bit to Ghostbox, I remember at Comixology event at New York Comic Con, kind of seeing the first couple of pages and like a brief summary of what the book's about. Of like people die close to the box, and these two girls, their uncle that's been estranged for years dies, and they find the box, and one of them dies and gets sucked into it, and that's the only premise they told us at New York Comic Con. And as I've
Right.
read issues 1 through 4 now, I'm like, whoa, there's so much more to the story than they've ever led on to try and get people interested in this book, because that premise alone was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. And there's so much lore and so many details in issues like 2 through 4. What was it like starting with, that concept in the first issue and then expanding a much bigger and richer world with all the history behind the evil in this book?
It was crazy fun. Obviously we knew all of the sort of the cosmology as we went in. So we had a really solid sense of where the story was going. Um, there are still some reveals to come in issue 5. You know, Lion of God, this angel, this sort of like very ragged, very wounded, very damaged angel who lives inside the box is crucial to the way the story plays out. But we kind of had to put a lampshade over him for a lot of the earlier parts of the story. He's there, but he's not explained, and then he gradually comes to the fore, and then you get characters like the police detective Warren, who sort of like is introduced in issue 2, and similarly has a bigger and bigger role as the story goes forward. It's been great fun. You know, Pablo and I brainstormed all of this together. It's very much I'm listed as writer and he's listed as artist, but it's a book where the story grew organically between the two of us, which is something it's not a given by any means. Um, with Ghost with the Lycan, I wrote it many years before Diego came on board, so I couldn't aim it towards him in any meaningful way. Whereas with Pablo, who I've known for years, I was able to sort of tailor the scripts towards him, and also he was able to take them and then kind of like rework some of it. Because one of the beauties of Comixology is it's not a fixed page count. So sometimes I'd write a page and he'd say, I want to do that as a splash. I want to sort of open that out into a splash. So I'd write a 22-page script and get a 28-page issue back. So it's very organic, very give and take, and just like loads of fun.
And it seems like Comixology, like they're a lot of fun to read the books, because like you said, there's not like a limit like on page counts, and you can kind of do a little bit more than what you could like in traditional print. And I can't
Yeah.
remember if this was at the Comixology event or maybe it was someone else that we've had on the show, but they've said that comics is the best medium to tell a story, because you can do it so quick. The turnaround from writing, drawing, and print, it's like maybe 8 to 10 weeks if you're doing it as fast as possible. And you can tell so many stories through comics because there's no genre that it's set to. And I think both the Lycan and Ghostbox are a really good example of these are stories that people may not necessarily think of when they think of comics because it's like superheroes and all those things. And I was curious to know, like, what's it like to kind of be able to tell stories that people might think, oh, this would be something from like an anime or a TV show. Like, that's the kind of genre I think like the Ghost Box and like can kind of fall into. But it's a breath of like fresh air to be like, whoa, this is a book that I can pick up and read on my iPad or Kindle or whatever through Comixology. And it's not something that I was expecting to get out of like a traditional comic book. What's it like to be able to like write those stories and surprise people with exciting stories that way?
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there about the periodicity. You know, the fact that a comic book story just happens like uh, with very, very little friction, very little delay. I mostly write prose these days. I write novels, and with a novel, you're when you start writing, you're probably about a year and a half out from publication. It has a really, really long, slow gestation period, and after you hand the finished draft in, there are months and months of nothing much happening while it goes through copy editing and proofreading and all of and the design of the cover, right, and the cover blurb and so on, the synopsis. Talking to booksellers, trying to drum up orders for it. So it's an age. There is something absolutely thrilling and exhilarating about pitching a comic, getting a green light, and then going straight to script, and then having it solicited and having it sort of suddenly come into the world. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of genre, there's kind of like there is no genre that kind of that had its origin in comics. I mean, superheroes maybe, but superheroes existed in prose form, in sort of in a more rudimentary version before they were picked up with comics. What you have in comics, I think, is you have the periodical storytelling, the episodic storytelling, which novels used to work that way in the 19th century, but they don't anymore. They're just sold as one finished block. Personally, I love the suspense. I love reading in pamphlet form and having to wait, coming to the end of an issue, and then having to wait for the resolution. I think those agonizing waits, which you don't get in TV anymore, not really, because of binging on streaming platforms. I think the waits are part of the experience, sort of letting your imagination dwell on where the story is going as it unfolds episodically.
And you really
Yeah, and
bring
I
up a
think that
really
really
point.
creates the yeah, and I think that creates the excitement around the book itself because after reading issue 4 of Ghostbox, I was like, where is issue 5 coming out? And I looked it up online. I was like, okay, it's coming out in March. And this is what really hit me about, I think, one of the beauty of releasing a book on Comixology. I was like, oh, I got to go to my comic book shop on that day and pick it up. And I was like, no, idiot, it's coming out on Comixology. I can just pull it up on my phone at midnight and start reading it. But because it's on Comixology, it's a lot easier for me to try and get my friends and for other people interested in it because they don't have to worry about going to their shop and being like, where's all the back issues? I can't find it. I can just say, you've got your Comixology account. You go read issues 1 through 4. And when 5 comes out, let's read it and talk about it because it's a great book. And 2, like it's low effort for having to go back and research everything else. So you can just pull it up on your phone, which I think is a great thing that you've done with Comixology with these books.
Yeah, I love it as a platform, and they're just really nice people to work with as well. They've got a great team over there. The publicity team under Pamela is amazing. Um, I had a great experience with them. And the other side of that, I guess, is also the kind of the way the faithfulness with which the art is reproduced on a digital in digital form. Peter Gross said to me one time, "Why would you choose four colors when you can have 16 million?" You know, that's kind of the difference between traditional printing and the sort of fully realized digital art.
It's really awesome. And again, like to your point about like sort of like having that periodical form in that way, I think like that's something that people crave, and I think that's been good about like diving into comics, just because again, you don't really get that in TV with the binge form. And I think I've actually like tried to stray away from even binging shows that kind of like have all the episodes in, because I do feel like you binge it, if you really like it, you talk about it for a day, but then you start to forget things.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you start to sort of like it becomes like all one thing, and you don't really get to dwell on some things. Like what was really great about like the past year was watching something like The Penguin on a weekly basis, and being able to talk after every episode and hang on every like cliffhanger and say like, hey, is it going here? Is it going there? Instead of being like, oh, next, or it automatically playing. And I think comics has really done a great job, just because it still has that. I think even if you look at stuff like manga, like when I read manga, it's usually in a volume form. I've gotten everything together and everything. But a lot of the comics I read is, especially the ones I love, is on that monthly basis. And I think it's something that you don't realize you miss it until it's gone. You're like, oh, I was enjoying all these things when I was a kid, like on
yeah,
a monthly or weekly basis. And then, binging comes along. You're like, this is great. And then you start to think like, wow, we really lost something.
yeah, yeah. No, we're watching Severance, season two
Mhm.
of Severance at the moment, and doing exactly that. We're rationing it to
Yeah.
one episode every 4 or 5 days. We haven't quite managed one a week. We'll always succumb. But it's an event. It
Yeah.
becomes an event, like a high spot in the week.
Well, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate you coming and talking about Lycan and Ghostbox. But where can our listeners find you?
I'm still on the platform formerly known as Twitter. I'll probably be drifting over to Blue Sky soon. I don't do Facebook much anymore, so
Mm,
yeah, Twitter's the best place to find me.
awesome. And you guys can read Lycan issue 1, which is now available on Comixology, and also Ghostbox issues 1 through 4 are now available, with 5 coming out in March. Well, thank you so much, Mike. And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Cheers, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Badaboom podcast. Keep the conversation going with Chris and I on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You can find us on all these places at Badaboom Podcast. Get into the comments on our YouTube channel. Let us know what you like about the show or what you'd like to hear from us in the future. Until next time, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Thanks for listening.